What's Baldy saying? What's Baldy yapping on about now? Ah, jeez, he's in his room.
Hi, today I want to talk to you all about wokeness and where I think it came from. So, a lot of people don't really understand how all these things came together and how we experience probably the highest and the biggest level of censorship that at least I've experienced in my lifetime between the years of, I would say, 2014 and 2024.
I want to say that all this bullshit came from money. Follow the money, chat. Always check where the money's coming from. I did not know how many video games were actually funded by the government. The most mind-blowing one that I thought was really funny was what was a stupid game that had $80,000 from the Italian government? God, fucking Fartborn? God, not mixtape. You guys know what I'm talking about? No, not Xvoto. Not Xvoto. Yeah, Dustborn. Fartborn. Yeah, that one. Dusty Fart. Yeah, that one had like $80,000 from like the European government to make that game from the taxpayer money. That was like, for me, kind of a moment where I'm like, I wonder what other games got funded.
Now, what I find to be the most ironic about this is that the main thesis of
yeah,
what I'm going
Sweden,
to be talking about is the way that you created the unholy matrimony, the unholy trinity between ideologically captured media, bad faith capitalism, and mentally ill activism. And these things put together all created an apparatus that I want to construct and then deconstruct and talk to you all about how it actually maintained power and how it manifested and projected that power throughout the entire internet. So fundamentally, what I find to be the most ironic about all of this is that the main people that are the biggest social justice warriors, the biggest woke people, the people that care so much about all of these different issues, almost every single one of them hate capitalism. But
Anita Sarkeesian. That's the first one I could think of, and that's the one that had spearheaded Gamergate along with her friend. I forget what her name is. Yeah, and then it turns out she wasn't even a gamer. She doesn't even game. They dug up videos of her. Yeah, Zoe Quinn and Anita Sarkeesian. Holy shit, I hate those guys so much. They ruined games. They really did.
In an ironic sense, none of their ideology would have ever been tolerated by anybody if capitalism wasn't there that was insulating it from criticism. And I want to talk about why that happened. So we're going to go back. We're going to go way back to 2010 to 2014. It depends on how you want to define it, but that's where I would really start.
He's doing the bird hands. Yeah, he took off his Gagey shirt because Gagey time is over. Now he's doing the bird hands.
So that's whenever you started seeing terms of service on websites. That's whenever you started seeing words that you couldn't say. That's whenever, instead of telling people, if you don't like it, don't look at it.
When I fucking opened up World of Warcraft and it asked me to, like, accept the code of conduct, and I think when I saw that on League, I was like, oh, it's fucking over. I think League did it first, and then WoW followed suit after Blizzard was acquired by Microsoft. And they constantly shove that little agreement in your face, too.
Instead of that, you decided to instead tell people if you don't like it, then nobody can look at it. Why did these things change? What happened? Why was it that a place like Reddit, for example, that was the open bastion of free speech, suddenly changed and then allowed itself to be completely colonized by a small manufactured minority of people and a manufactured consensus of ideas that is really not representative of their user base or really of anybody in real life either? How did this happen? And I'll tell you exactly how it happened. It's actually very simple. It happened because of money. So what happened between 2010 and 2014? You started getting a lot of ads. You started getting a lot...
That is true. When did the YouTube apocalypse happen? When did YouTube apocalypse happen? The first time it happened was 2015, but then the actual first adpocalypse happened in 2017. Yeah, that actually tracks. Oh my god, that Dude, it's a culture war. Oh my god.
Of advertisements, you start getting a lot of, ways that these companies and these websites were basically making money. And if you look at this on the stock market for any of these different companies, this is very clearly the growth period of their business. This is whenever they started really making a lot of money.
Yep.
Because a lot of people falsely attribute the woke era to something that was happening during COVID, which I think was the fever pitch, but it wasn't the entire disease. The disease actually started between 2010 and 2014, and it was manifested by advertising and then companies wanting to maintain that advertising money in order to maintain the to maintain the advertisements.
The other thing that it wasn't just like advertisers being scared of like edgy content. It was like the state of like creating these platforms to censor, but then also maintaining plausible deniability. It's like, oh no, we're not censoring you for saying fuck in the first 7 minutes of the video, because it was actually a lot stricter. For those that don't know, back in the, I think right as the apocalypse started, you could not cuss in the first 2 to 3 minutes of the video, or maybe even 7 minutes if I recall correctly. You couldn't cuss at all, otherwise you get instantly demonetized. They actually rolled that back to not swearing in the first 7 seconds. Which is, I guess, is fine. Like, I don't know. I still think it's cringe, but like, it's better than no swearing at all for 7 minutes.
Continue making more money. So what happened is that you had these activists and people that are working inside of media companies, and then the media companies are running smear campaigns. They're talking about how, this website is allowing, racism or dangerous.
They tried to shut down 4chan and other websites like that.
Language or X or Y
several
thing. And we're not even talking about the COVID era,
times.
by the way. Keep this in mind. This is back in the, Gamergate and even pre-Gamergate era. This is when these things were happening. So what really was going on is that they kept making articles and they kept saying that, like, oh, this website is allowing X, Y, and Z content, and it's horrible that this is happening. Then there was a harassment and a...
You can't shut down the federally ran site. I mean, honestly, I do think feds are on 4chan. There's no fucking way they're not. You're right. You're absolutely right. I do think there's a lot of rats and moles in there, for sure.
Advocacy campaign that pushed the advertisers that were advertising on the website, that was basically egged on by these ideologically captured media apparatuses and individuals, too. To put pressure on these companies, because companies, you have to admit, you have to understand, I mean, are they're not moral, they're not immoral, they're amoral. If Hitler won World War II, most of these companies would be selling swastikas.
The butterfly effect has proven that time and time again. I think there was like an instance in the Fairly Odd Parents or some other goofy Cartoon Network show where they joked about a certain side winning, or like China winning, and how everybody in America would be speaking Chinese. People have made this joke, but it's not really a joke.
And it's important to always remember that. When
He's
a company
right.
thinks that your social cause or your social opinion is the correct social opinion, the odds are it's because they think they can make money off of you if they tell you that.
And that's why I hate it when corpos mask and tell you that your identity is so cool and awesome, and we love you so much and we appreciate you. You can be gagey or whatever the fuck you want. They don't fucking care. I hate it that people attach themselves to these parasitic corpos that clearly only want to sell you a product and want to get your wallet.
That's the only reason.
It pisses
Why do you
me
think
off.
they all care about Pride? Well, it's because they can sell something with a rainbow on
Exactly.
it. So anyway, these companies care about money.
Because it makes
money.
money.
And so what happened is that the media apparatus created and manufactured a false consensus that everybody was upset and angry about these types of behaviors, right? Everybody was upset about this. People were super mad. And now these companies have to take action. They have to do something. They have to act. And this is what's happening also, by the way. It happened inside of mainstream media as well. You saw different shows that were, pushing ideologies that were not necessarily what people accepted in terms of, culturally acceptable. And I think that really, if you take a step back, think about the term brand friendly. Think about that term, brand friendly. What does brand friendly almost always mean? That means at least something that is either agnostic to politics or leftist leaning. And I think that really kind of gives away the game, doesn't it? Because fundamentally, every single one of these companies always kowtows to this group of people. Now, why did they do that? Is it because they're the majority? Well,
They're
if
very
Donald Trump won
loud.
the election, it seems like that's not the case. So why actually do they get listened to? It's actually extremely simple. It's because these people are very good at institutional capture, and they've done an incredibly
Audience capture and also canceling people over everything.
good job at
Yeah.
it. Whether it's businesses, whether it's HR departments, whether it's media companies, or whether it's other forms of NGOs, or just different media apparatuses.
I also think that the real power move, like beyond the consumer, the consumer advertisers, the real power move was actually like BlackRock, Vanguard, and all those like huge companies creating ESG scores and then creating check marks of what you can and can't do. Like, for example, I think that companies weren't actually scared of losing Bud Light sales. You know, the whole drama about like fucking, I don't even remember what it was about. Like, it was like, gosh, I wish I kind of, Bud Light drama. Like, basically they lost a bunch of consumers to like the whole fucking drama with the transgender influencer Dylan. Yeah, Dylan Mulvaney, right? Everybody was pissed. They were super mad, right? They weren't actually scared of losing sales. They were scared of losing access to this like passive investment money from these people if they didn't hit the DEI or whatever the check boxes. I think that's like bad faith capitalism on steroids.
That are third party that exist on the internet, or even individuals that are just politically minded that want to advocate for something. And I think that they're very strategic and they're very effective, and they have been. And it took a long time for people to identify this. And
yeah, and it took a long time for to get to this point because Gamergate started in 2014, and then the apocalypse started 3 years later, like the actual one. Because I think it was already starting. It's just that it like escalated by 2017. They were hitting people like PewDiePie and like people that you didn't expect, like that were having problems. That was like the first major real world proof of this shit happening at like a massive fucking scale. And it became like the template used later on for everything from like comics to Hollywood to corporate HR to some extent, I think too. They realized what they were doing.
Then begin to develop countermeasures like what we have now. So anyway, all of these people have basically created this entire permission structure around language. And the permission structure around language enabled people to accept that certain things were just simply not allowed to be said. And this manufactured the ideology of being brand friendly. This could not have happened without mainstream big companies enforcing this ideology by the rule of money. If there was no money involved in any of these companies, then none of these companies would have changed. You used to be able to say the N-word on Twitch.
He's right. That was before Amazon.
You used to be able to say the F-word on Twitch.
People didn't fucking say it often, but yeah, you could without getting banned.
You want to know what changed?
Isn't that interesting?
Advertisers changed. What do you think the probability is that every single company suddenly grew a conscience and wanted to make all of these different stores against the rules at, ironically, the same time that they all got a bunch of money for advertising? What do you think the odds of that are? Well, I'd say what the odds are. It's 0. They're doing it for the advertising.
No, they really care about people's feelings and what the N-word implies and what the F-word says. Guys, corpos really care about your feelings.
Money. That's always what they were doing it for. So why is it that these companies are listening to these people? Well, this is the two-part thing of identity capture and just basically capture in general. So you have the media companies that have been taken over by these people who want to weaponize the media companies' influence in order to push their ideology. This is relatively obvious. I think that we all know this is what happens. But then the second thing is that people that work in...
God, he's talking so fucking fast and has... Sorry, like, I actually really appreciate how eloquent Asmon can be, but he talks so fast sometimes. That's why I'm taking pauses in between his talking. Sorry.
Side of the actual companies themselves also have
This
some
is
of
not
these ideologies,
well, I can understand
and
what
they
he's
create
saying.
an alarmism around not making these people happy. Now, I think that you've started to realize that usually whenever these people are upset, it's not a boycott, it's a goycott. Nobody cares.
Whoa!
It doesn't matter, and everybody that's angry and upset about it, there's really no effect that really has. So if you upset these people, you know, you saw this with how many video games where it's like, okay, well, you know, like, well, we're gonna own the chuds, and then nobody owns the game.
Up, yeah.
And so that's really not a good way, not a good way to keep your job, is it? Sure seems that way. Look at Bungie. So anyway, what happens is that people inside of, you know, HR departments and other types of administrative and influential positions at these companies use those positions in order to manufacture alarmism around the manufactured consensus. And I apologize, I'm using these words all the time, but I just want to make sure that I make it completely clear that none of this was organic and none of this was done because people wanted it. Nobody actually wanted any of this. This was forced on people, and it was done so by the unholy matrimony between...
And you know what's funny? I think around about 2010 to 2014 was around about the time when people in schools, I don't know about like outside of America, but in America and Canada, that's when people were like, no, you can't say the word. That was like around about the same time, maybe a little bit earlier, but that's when it started.
Mentally ill advertisers, or sorry, well, that was that.
Mentally ill advertisers.
Mentally ill activists and cynical advertisers that are trying to cater to the lowest common denominator of capitalism and failing massively, by the way.
That's good. I hope that it actually pivots. I hope. There's hope to that.
You can see that with Bud Light. So anyway, all of this has happened. These companies now are then taking away partnerships, they're taking away advertising, and they're changing the ways that they want their their stuff broadcast and their stuff advertised. And that causes these companies to create a culture around basically playing it safe. They don't want to take any risks. They want to make sure that nobody does anything wrong. And they also don't want to attract the negative attention to the media class and to the activist class. Because if you attract negative attention from them by not doing what they want, then they manufacture conspiracies. They try to create negative sentiment about you. And then they call you, like, I mean, nowadays,
You're
right?
crazy.
I mean, how many people are being called a Nazi? It's like, oh, yeah, I'm not seeing your point of view. I guess I'm a Nazi now, right?
Yeah, now people say, yeah, okay, well, then I am, sure. And then they just don't concede. Because you can't fight to their fucking goalposts. Their goalposts are ever shifting. And that's why there's so many instances of, like, politicians, and I don't want to get into politics, but politicians getting eaten alive by their own captured audience because it's shifted so much. Shu covered this in a video. It's like a line that goes from left to right and then their center, and it's just getting pushed further and further, further and further. And now if you're anything but like anything to one further side of like the left or the right, you're considered a Nazi. It didn't used to be like that. It really didn't.
That's the way that the world works.
Purity testing,
and
yeah, it's constant.
I think this was very effective. Now, anybody that plays Classic WoW knows that if you cast the crowd control on an opponent too many times, it begins to have what you would call diminishing returns. Yep. And I think at this point, it's basically just on the immunity stage. Yeah. But for many, many years, this was an effective way of shutting down conversation. Sexist, racist, misogynist, you know, like Nazi, far right, etc. All of these terms were used as buzzwords in order to allow that media class to pressure.
It's like a spell. They think the spell is gonna last forever.
The advertising and the business class to pressure the social media class to pressure everybody else to adhere to their ideology and their language. And that's exactly how it happened. And I think that let's talk about, and obviously this just kind of got worse and worse and worse and worse. And the reason why it got worse and worse and worse is actually something that's very much a parallel of what's happening with the Democratic Party right now. The Democratic Party is going through what I would say is basically a civil war. This is kind of similar.
Audience capture, moving goalposts.
Or the Tea Party happening in like the late 2000s and maybe the early 2010s in the Republican Party. But I would view this to be slightly different because it's much more existential. You had people that were not really involved in any of these things because they cared about them. They were involved in these things because it made them feel good. And this is something that's becoming more and more obvious, is that many of these companies and many of these people are not really adopting these social causes out of any sort of like real genuine intention or real genuine care. They're adopting social causes.
I'm gonna go a little bit mask off here. I hate the feminists that didn't talk about what happened in the UK with the whole, you know, the gangs. I did. I watched all of it. I didn't talk about it on stream because honestly, I feel like that's kind of like beyond my scope. But I did watch it. Right? How could you have the audacity to being a women's rights activist but not being outraged by something so severe with so much proof? Sorry, call me a feminist. I think that's bad.
As social accessories. They're using their pride flags, their Palestine flags, and their trans flags, or like their coexist bumper stickers. They're not using these as actual pieces of advocacy. They're using them as social accessories so they can signal to other people that they're a good person. So what the point of that is that there actually is no real kind of end goal. There's no ideology, that there's no light at the end of this tunnel. There's no North Star that these people are working towards.
Yeah, because the North Star keeps fucking shifting constantly.
And that's the reason why the ideology continues to self-radicalize. It's because it was never about ever doing something and achieving something and meeting a goal. It was manufacturing consent, enforcing that consent and that permission structure on the entire population, and then feeling like a good person for doing it. And that's the most important thing. It's not because of the people. It's not because of the people they're trying to help. It's because the main person they want to help is themselves. And
again, it's these movements that function like purity spirals or purity checks, like someone in chat said, or like status competitions. Everyone is like on a fucking totem pole. Once you're captured, these like institutions need constant new enemies to fight because they always need to have someone to fight and maintain this like power structure. It's so weird. That's why I never delve into this shit too deeply because it just makes me upset and angry, and I don't like dedicating too much energy to that shit. And like, you know, there's other people that talk about it and they're more eloquent than I am, like Asmon, for example. But like, it's like this self-perpetuating, like, I want to say like self-perpetuating bureaucracy. Is that like the appropriate metaphor? Because you're like being bureaucratic and then you're like essentially eating yourself alive. There's no end goal, and that's what makes it so dangerous.
Want to help themselves feel better.
Yeah, like an
and
Ouroboros.
That's the reason why it's become more and more radical. And I think that it was generally tolerable in 2014 to 2019, but COVID really sent it into orbit. Pun intended, a fever pitch, right? And it really got a lot worse. And the reason why I think it got a lot worse is actually very simply because you had everybody staying inside, companies were spending infinitely more money, and I think obviously you had social...
The government was pumping those companies full of money so that they could stay afloat and not look weak. That's another thing. And this was all over the world too, not just America. Yeah.
Rest and everything else.
Everybody didn't want to look weak in front of the enemy.
People just continued to self-radicalize, and because so many people were being involved and basically swept up in the movement, it accelerated the progression of the movement to the point where you couldn't even say that there were two genders anymore. And I think this happened, the reason why it stopped actually wasn't that people got tired of it. No. It's because one person got tired of it, and that person was Elon Musk. I do think that it was a timeline shift when Elon Musk bought Twitter.
Yeah.
I think that if Elon Musk had not bought Twitter, we would probably still be living with the COVID-era censorship, and it would probably be continuing to get worse and worse.
Twitter is what Blue Sky is basically now, what Twitter used to be. And I'm honestly so thankful, because holy fuck, Blue Sky is such a shithole.
And worse, because those people still controlled all the levers of power. They may be stupid, they may be delusional, they may be selfish, but they are very organized, and they also do have a decent understanding of political theory, and at least...
X isn't a great place either. Yeah, but you can say what you fucking want without fucking censoring yourself. I value freedom of speech over fucking or not hurting someone's fucking feelings. Yeah, it's a fucking shithole. But at least there's like fucking you can see the world for what it is, as opposed to like lying to yourself and being like, no, everybody has to be really nice like on Blue Sky. I find that a way to live.
Institutional capture to the extent that they can apply it and use it to their advantage. And I think that's commendable. I just wish they would do it to something that wasn't destructive. So the point that I'm making is that COVID, I think, accelerated all of it. Elon Musk buying Twitter was like a crack in the dam that unlocked basically everybody's freedom of speech. And you went from not being...
Plus X just lets Nazis run around, LOL. You're not arguing with good faith. You don't follow me. You just joined into the chat because you saw Asmon's face on the thumbnail.
Able to say that there were two genders.
You're not arguing in good faith. You're just pissed.
Which race is the best race, and that's a really big change. The Overton window didn't shift. The entire building got bulldozed, and you built it somewhere else. So in the entire world, I think this was probably the biggest, or internet world. This was the biggest shift in terms of, like ideology, in terms of behavior and everything, is when Elon Musk ended up buying Twitter. So he buys Twitter, everybody can say whatever they want, and then also, at that point, Elon said, well, I don't need advertising, and that's the reason why Twitter, I think, has freedom of speech.
I mean, Twitter, you don't get banned for saying the F-slur or the N-word, which I don't think is healthy for anyone but Shrug. Would you want people to go to jail and get reprimanded for saying the F word and the N word in real life if they said it to you? I do not. Because you know what I can do? I can walk away from the situation. Do you know what's worse? Getting stabbed or shot. Because that's what, for me, when people threaten my life or dox me on Twitter, then that's when I'm like, okay, well, I hope the police gets involved for that. If someone calls me the F word on Twitter, I'm like, okay, like, I don't know. I just don't care.
The more that these companies allow advertising, the less freedom of speech that they will be allowed. And you could say that that's fair because companies don't want to deal with this kind of stuff and they want to be amoral. I understand that, but I think that we should also acknowledge that the genesis of all of this censorship is not simply social justice. It's actually just making money. And if it wasn't for capitalism, you'd still have people spamming the N-word all the time. And how do
I still remember when I was a kid playing World of Warcraft. I think it was like 2011. There was a person that had a macro that was just spamming the N-word over and over and over again in a battleground. Do you want to know what happened to that person when they got banned? They didn't get banned for slurs. They got banned for spamming. Yep.
I know that? Well, it's because every single website that isn't run based on...
In COD, for fuck's sake, in 2009, you could say fucking slurs to people. You could.
Of advertising and doesn't, depend on it, like 4chan, Twitter, or Rumble, for example. All of these places have people saying all kinds of crazy things. So the moment that you give people a mask, they'll show you their true face. And I think that's also the reason why they want to use ways to identify people. This is why doxing is so effective. Doxing is also another effective way of doing things, and the reason why doxing is so effective is because doxing allows people to apply those consequences that they would previously apply to companies, to social media websites, which was a lot harder for them to do. Now all they have to do is achieve it with one individual person. And you see this also, the reversal of this with, for example, Charlie Kirk. You see people talking about like, oh, I'm glad Charlie Kirk died, and then they get fired from their job, and these people were saying...
Yeah, have the same thing happen with people that said shit about George Floyd. Yeah. Sorry, you said something, people are gonna find out because they're pissed. Equal rights and equal lefts,
Like, well, this isn't
It's either all okay or none of it is. Again, just put a line in the sand. It can't just be like pick and choosing.
I don't agree with this. Well, that's too bad. You shouldn't have been doing it for the last 10 years. So really what I think has happened is that now you have an environment where freedom of speech is more or less completely tolerated. And on top of it being completely tolerated, you have a shifting of the window of what is acceptable thought, the Overton window, that is happening faster and faster and faster. I think there's a force multiplier with this. And fundamentally, I wanted to let everybody understand and help everybody understand how these media companies and these activists are pressuring these companies to pressure other companies, news websites, social media websites, and everything else in between into making it to where you're not able to have freedom of speech. That is the main reason why it's happening.
I keep thinking back to the butterfly effect of if the Nazis won, then, like, it would have been completely different. There would be completely different language structure. What slurs would be okay? What wouldn't be okay? You know what I'm saying? Like, it's all relative to, like, one thing happening. And it's all because of fucking money.
You're not losing your freedom
Play
of speech
Wolfenstein?
because of
Well, I mean, that's
directly.
a fantasy,
You're
you know.
losing it because
like,
of
what's
advertisers
actually
directly
gonna happen?
and activists indirectly that are working through as a tertiary source. Actually, the
like, what's okay to say in China and what's not? It's different for what we say. Yeah, like, what are they allowed to say? I don't know. I'm not Chinese. I don't live there.
Media apparatus that they have ideologically
It's all
captured.
relative.
Whether this is video games journalism, whether it's real journalism, whether it's, well, unfortunately, basically any type of media that's mainstream to begin with. And you're starting to see this receding. And I think it's almost pretty much gone. I think that you're going to need probably 5 more years of cultural institutional change. And in terms of the very ingrained things like education, corporate environment, corporate policy, and let's not even get into the legal system in which these ideologies are codified into law, it will take a while to actually undo all of this, but we're very well on the path to that. And I wanted to show people kind of this cause and effect, because I think that a lot of people haven't really necessarily looked at it, and they're facing they're focusing their anger at these, you know, like weird social justice warriors on the internet. And
I think what this, like, moral panic is gonna, like, it's actually gonna be compared probably to, like, the satanic panic in the 80s and 90s. But it was also massively influenced by social media and corporate incentives, which is money, right? Like, I think that from 2014 to probably now, maybe a couple more years, right? That's gonna be like a fucking historic, like, I don't know, just to study it, like this distinct period of, like, elite driven, like, control over language and, like, what's normal and what has to be, like, what has to be corrected. Like, I don't know. I think we're still in, like, the really early quote unquote correction phase. Maybe I'm wrong. I don't know. I'm just a fucking anime girl on the internet.
I think that go ahead, be my guest, right?
US sites are censoring different cultures too if they think they are offensive. We saw it with 2 Balkan for You. That's actually a really good point. Yeah, the 2 Balkan for You Reddit, which is a Reddit dedicated to just Balkans and them making fun of each other, it got banned because it's too offensive. But, like, Balkans do this shit all the time. They don't actually fucking care. They just live their fucking life. But to them, it's like, no, you can't say that. No, you can't. That's not okay.
Do whatever you want to do. But those people are not fundamentally the ones that are making this happen. The ones that are fundamentally making it happen are the companies that are putting pressure on the websites, on the businesses, everything in order to fulfill and conform to their ideology. And I do believe this is a situation that's kind of like nuclear weapons, for example. You cannot afford to not play the game. I think that if you want to control and you want to not have institutional capture, you have to engage in institutional capture. There is not a world where this weapon...
Well, everybody fucking does it. It's a tug of war.
And this tool is not used. There's only a weapon where it's either you using it or it being used against you.
Yeah.
And so my advocacy and my ask for everybody is that when you see people that are pushing for this kind of ideology, especially whenever they're doing it through vectors of commercial aspects, like, for example, advertising, you have to push back 10 times as hard. Because if these commercial places realize that these things are losing money, you're going to start seeing all of these people, their entire power structure.
I mean, you can literally see it this year. For so many years on Twitter, all of the brands used to change all of their profile pictures on Twitter and other websites to the fucking gay colors, right? To the rainbow flag. Now all of a sudden, I think it was only Studio fucking 343, the Halo one. It's kind of strange. For so many years, it used to be just like this thing that everybody kind of teased and made fun of. Oh yeah, CDPR as well. Yeah, it was like 2 companies out of like 10, the really big ones.
Completely evaporate because their power structure is actually maintained and enforced by capitalism. And it's not just by capitalism. I'm a big capitalism enjoyer, but I would say it is by bad faith,
it's like filibustering,
unintelligent, uninformed capitalism that is being done by the lowest common denominator. And those are the people that you really should be looking at as your enemy. Those are your enemies, because those are the ones that are cutting the checks, that are forcing the ideologies, and they're doing it from the top down. And yes, they're being influenced by the bottom, but it's the top that is making this decision, and it's these people that are fundamentally pulling the levers of power and changing things institutionally and making it to where you don't have a voice. And the reason why I want to make this video is that I think that a lot of times people don't really understand that. They don't see how these things have manifested, and they don't understand, they can't construct and deconstruct how all this has come together.
I also think the fact that we have so much social media, and social media is so far and wide available, even to the poorest person, like a homeless person can have a phone. It is affordable. You can get a phone and just start tweeting. I think that kind of sentiment for everybody to have access, and I have to read people's stupid fucking opinions. And like my stupid opinion, sure, it goes both ways, but there is a degree where it's like, there comes a point where it's like, where do we draw the line on like what people, like how do we take you seriously if you can't even like put your shoes on in the morning?
Been on the internet for 25 years. I've seen all this happen myself. I'd be curious to hear what other people's comments are in the in the comment section. But fundamentally, I think that we really do have to be more outspoken. I think that with video games, the last thing I want to talk about is that with video games, I think that we've done an incredibly great job. You have many of the—
I also think this is another thing that popped up in my head. PayPal getting censored and through manga. PayPal getting censored in Japan. Like one of my artists who does art for a living, he had issues with PayPal for a while because Japan didn't cater to the Western standard of like art and product manufacturing. Yeah, MasterCard and Visa and PayPal, they were all trying to censor them. Yeah, Fanbox.
These different companies that are going back to McDonald's, they're going back to being Applebee's servers. And, no shade to any of the people that do those jobs, but fundamentally, they're simply not,
And also, another thing, I just thought of this. Why did YouTube didn't not only fucked with advertisers and fucked everyone up with demonetization, they also removed the like and dislike button. Do you want to know why? Because it was the only way that other people could know that something was just not good. It was just a way for people to say something. Even if the comments were disabled, you could leave a dislike button. And they removed it, and now people don't fucking talk about it. It's still there? No, it's not. You're using an extension, you ding-dong. It's literally gone.
Much of a creative...
Now if, like, a bad video game releases, or, I don't know, something outrageous happens, and, like, people downvote it, you can't see it.
Job is making a video game. And I really think that what you have to have happen is you have to have even more of these points on the graph in order to have companies be able to see that there's a very clear line. And I think that's beginning to happen. If you look at, for example, a lot of the new video games, you see a lot less ideology that's being imposed into these video games. And I think that you're starting to see it with movies as well, especially whenever you have movie after movie that prioritizes identity politics, ideology, or some other form of message over actually appealing to their customers. And the best way that you can show people that that is a bad idea, there are 2 things. Number 1, vote with your wallet, and number 2, vote with your voice. Tell people the way that you feel, express yourself, and do it loudly. Because if you do it louder than other people, then people are going to listen to you instead. This isn't a world—
Money talks more than the people crying on the internet.
Where you can just abstain. This isn't a world where you can just say, well, I'm just simply not going to do that because I don't agree with that. If you don't do it, they'll do it to you. Yeah. And that's my real— I want people to understand this. And I understand it might be a cynical pill to swallow. And I get that. I understand that. But I think that it's true. And if you don't think it's true, just wait and see, pay attention, listen, and just look around. And I think that you'll begin to realize that that's really the path forward. So I wanted to explain and talk about that. I hope you guys all watched and enjoyed it. And I'm curious to hear what people's comments are in the comment section below. So thanks all for watching. I'll see you tomorrow. Peace.
Peace. Peace. Corpos are miserable. You know what? Another thing that pisses me the fuck off about YouTube, and I know this isn't even like exclusive, but it's because they started catering to censorship. You can't say you have to say unalive instead of kill yourself. You know what I'm saying? You either have to censor it or use another word, and it actually changes the language. It changes how you, yeah, or in Minecraft, and like you have to fucking tiptoe, and it's so weird how YouTube has such a massive sharehold over people's language and they don't even realize it. I hate those grotesque euphemisms. I agree, I totally hate it too, but it's like either that or I basically lose all my money from a video if I talk about it. It's so fucking stupid. I fucking hate it. I hate it. I hate it. I hate it. All the AD stuff? Yeah, like if you talk about... Again, I want to include this in the video as like an afterthought, but like you can't say certain diseases, you can't say certain sicknesses, you can't say certain isms, you know? You can't talk about medical stuff. Yeah, corn, you can't say the word with the P too much or it can get censored, and advertisers don't like that. You can't be truthful and real without like losing all your money. Like, I do think YouTube at a certain point was at its peak and then it just got completely destroyed. Now you have to tiptoe. Like, for me, for example, I'm suppressed because I showed a 3-second clip of a fucking pufferfish eating a carrot. Now I get 1/3 of my fucking usual views. But I mean, that's besides the point. Not that I'm not happy with my viewership, but I'm just saying, like, what if they're doing it to other people for saying the wrong thing? For me, it's like, oh, you broke the guidelines. Okay, whatever. Right? Gotta break out the social media ghettos. You can't even do that because there's only so many websites that exist. How long does that last? It can last up to a year. And they don't give you a timeline. It can just randomly go away on its own. You never know. A pufferfish? Yeah, a pufferfish eating a carrot for 2 seconds. Yeah. I don't know. It's tiring, bros. It's tiring. I hate the corpos. If you want to find out who's behind everything, just fucking look at what you're not allowed to criticize. Can't say the naughty words.